right, time now for night court. Despite recent protests, a statue of Robert E. Lee is still standing tonight in Richmond, Virginia, after a circuit court judge says an order preventing its removal will stay in place for another 30 days. Governor Ralph Northam announced plans to remove the monument in June, but a descendant of signatories to an 1890 deed that gave the statue to the state argues Virginia must, quote, faithfully guard it. So time to start an argument. We've got criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool and Washington Times legal affairs reporter and attorney Alex Sawyer. So let's start with the lawsuit. This is Exhibit A, and it was filed by William Gregory, who is the great-grandson of the two signatories of the deed, who argues that, quote, under the terms of the 1890 agreement and a legislature-approved resolution, the state is supposed to consider the monument and the area around it perpetually sacred and faithfully guard it and affectionately protect it. Affectionately, Brian. So argue your case against removing the statue.
Yeah, look, I'm proud of Mr. Gregory for bringing this lawsuit because he's challenging the governor, Kristen, on one grounds. He thinks the governor has unilaterally just decided to take that statue down. But wait a minute. The last time I checked the definition of governor, it means the chief executive of a state. So Gregory is arguing that the governor is not a legislator. He can't just determine what the law is to take down the statue. He's supposed to be exercising the executive branch. So I think he's got a good argument. And you know, more importantly, you know, Kristen, I think what we ought to do in this case, if I can mediate for a minute, is maybe if the statue's kept, maybe they should put a George Floyd statue next to Lee and have a baton given to George Floyd to show the progress we're going to make on racial equality in honor of George Floyd.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, Alex, you want to weigh in there?
No? Come on.
Well, I do know in that same area there is a statue of Arthur Ashe, you know, a famous black tennis player. So there has been monuments in that row. 4 others have since been removed that are Confederate statues. So this is the last Confederate statue standing, and that's, I think, why we're seeing this spill into the courts like we do many times. But the governor does have police powers, and he does want to avoid another Charlottesville. We saw law enforcement, we saw a protester, all died in Charlottesville, as well as dozens of injuries. We can look at Chicago. Just this week, dozens of law enforcement officers were injured there protecting a statue. So he does have an interest in making sure the state stays safe.
So let's take a look at Exhibit B, because on the other side you've got Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring, who wrote in a court filing on June 10th, the statue does not seek to explain or seek reconciliation for that time. It seeks to glorify it. It is a piece of state property freighted with exclusionary meaning to broad swaths of Virginians. Excuse me. So, Alex, make your case for removing the statue, your final case, and then, Brian, I'm going to give you the final word.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we talked about how Northam has that police power that he can usurp, but I also think that the mayor, who has issued an order wanting the statue removed, has a good argument in of itself, because in April, the Virginia Assembly passed a law saying that localities can remove Confederate statues. So if, you know, the court rules against the governor here, I think the mayor has a solid argument. So one way or the other, I think this statue will come down.
All right, Brian, I've got about 25 seconds. Final thoughts.
Yeah, now, is this really about safeguarding the public, or is it about political pandering? I mean, I think what we really ought to be doing here is allowing this statue to stay. It's part of history. We don't like it, but it is part of history. And maybe the governor and other Democratic leadership should start focusing on policing their cities and not taking time to remove statues.
All right, Brian, Alex, thank you both so much. We'll see in about 30 days what happens with this statue. Night, guys.
Thank you.
All right.